Hello everybody, welcome to today's video. I know I haven't posted recently reading any books. I've kind of been taking a little break. I do believe there is such a thing as taking in too much information too quickly, and quite frankly it was really doing a number on my journey that I'm going through at this time, trying to take in every piece of information whether I want to or not, reading back-to-back books. So I thought I would take a little break and then kind of just ease back in with some non-book related subjects if something should come to mind. And I do have something that I want to talk to you about today or share with you. And it's something that has been on my mind and in my heart for quite a while. And I just needed to wait until the right time to bring that to you because it is a big subject, and that is the subject of God. And in all of the books that I've read and in all of the inner work that I have done, I've learned that everybody's truth is different, but in also stepping back to observe what is going on in my state and in my country and what is going on in other countries and the arguments that we continue to have. One of the biggest ones that always stands out to me and seems so contradictory of fighting over would be religion, and specifically God. We've got so many different religions that refer to God differently, but at the end of the day, we're all still praying to the same God. We're all still talking about the same God. However, we're really, in essence, without realizing it, praying to a God that doesn't necessarily exist. And stay with me on that, because God certainly exists. It's just that I believe, after all the work that I've done and all of the sort of soul searching that I've done, I have come to the conclusion that so many people are now finding their way back to God, or they're waking up. They're all having their own journeys. It can be completely individual, or it can mean returning to a church or finding a church if you've never belonged to one. But there are still so many people that either have decided they no longer believe in God, or they have lost their faith in God. They have lost their relationship with Him. And I use the term him loosely because I don't personally believe that God is a gender. I believe God is an energy. And a lot of what we have learned for most people who have grown up in a religious household, or even just belonging to a religion, even if we didn't practice it, growing up, have sort of been taught to look at God in a very specific way. We've placed human personality traits and attributes on God that simply are not there. And on top of that, we have placed negative human attributes that I do not believe are there, like wrath and anger and vengeance and disease and disaster and destruction. These things many people blame on God. And then they turn away from God because these things happen, and they want to know, why would God allow this to happen? Why would He allow somebody to die of a horrible disease? Why would He allow a war where hundreds of thousands of people are killed? Why would He allow the Holocaust? Why wouldn't He allow this good person who was such a light in life to die? So I can understand why people lose their faith in God, because most of us have been taught about a God that isn't really who God truly is. And again, please keep in mind, these are just my beliefs. These are just the things that I've come to the conclusion of in my sort of search for truth. And it makes sense to me, in my mind, the things that I have come to the conclusion on. This doesn't have to make sense for you, and it certainly doesn't have to be your truth. No one can take your truth and beliefs away from you. However, for people that are searching for more and they don't even know what they're searching for, even if this video finds just one person who benefits from it, that's all I really care about, is one more person to maybe spark an interest to dig deeper into the essence of what God really is. So if you've seen any of my videos, I have shared throughout some of them that I was born and raised into a Catholic family. I am Mexican Italian, and my family was very Catholic. And up until about my mid-30s, I was Catholic as well. I wasn't always the best at practicing as far as going to church every Sunday, but I prayed and I followed the religious days and obligations. Like most, I would say I was a fair weather Catholic. That's what I would say. But I, in my heart, believed that that was the only religion that was the correct religion. And I know now that that's simply not correct. It's not the only correct religion. I personally don't think there's any perfect or correct religion. Each one has its own errors and its own beauty and truths that I can abide by, that I can understand. And again, that's just my opinion. But once I learned that God is not separate from us, that God is not beyond our reach and unreachable even, that God is not some old man with a long white beard and long white hair in robes sitting in this big golden chair behind pearly gates, waiting to decide who's worthy of joining him in heaven and who is not. That is the God that I sort of grew up with and believed in for a very long time. I believed that when bad things happened, it was because God was angry with us and raining his wrath upon down us. I specifically remember having a conversation with my grandmother about COVID and saying that God must be very angry with us to send this to us. And I believe that COVID is what sparked this shift that I had in my soul and in my heart. And I think it's happened for a lot of people. But God, to me, at the end of the day, has been made much more complex and much more difficult by man-made decrees and rules and restrictions and guidelines than it was ever meant to be. God does not send us wrath and disease and destruction. That is our own doing. Anything negative that we deem to be negative or bad or disastrous, it comes from our own actions, thoughts, and words. Let me go back up. Jesus talked a lot about this in the Bible, and it was basically karma, reaping and sowing, the universal law of cause and effect. That is what causes bad things to happen. And I remember thinking a long time ago, I would have a thought and then I would think, well, I didn't act on it and I didn't say it, so that means it's okay. And then I realized that even my thoughts, unspoken, still have power, a lot of power. And I realized that anything destructive or bad is something that we have created individually and together as a collective. If we're all scared about something at the same time, we're more likely to bring it on. That's just the way we work. We work together because we are connected, whether we realize it or want to believe that or not. And anything that comes from a place of love, compassion, and grace, anything that we do that comes from a genuine heart is God in action. And that is what we each are, is God in action. No matter who or what you've done in this world, if you are a human being, you have God within you, within your heart, within that spark in your mind that the scientists could study and never ever find. those sparks of light. It is what animates us, this energy and love of God. Now, again, I want you to keep in mind that these are just my truths, but it makes sense to me that so many people would decide that God has let them down, that God did not hear or care about their requests and prayers, because so many go unanswered, or because the request wasn't answered in the way that the person would hoped it would be. And that is for a variety of reasons. And sometimes God can be involved, but if it is anything negative, it is never involving God. God is within each one of us. Everything that lives, God is within. We cannot live without him. It is what creates our soul. It is that eternal soul and what animates us in life. And God does not cause anything negative. He is all goodness and all love. He also does not require repenting in the way that many religions teach. Many religions teach that you need to repent to God in order to be forgiven. But the misunderstanding is that when you repent, you should be repenting to the person that you have wronged, to the situation that you have wronged, whether it is yourself or somebody else out in the world. Whether you're forgiven or not is not the issue. The starting point is repenting to whomever you're sorry for and sorry to. I know that seems like a lot to take in. I'm telling you that I'm not saying that there isn't sin, but sin as it's been defined by religion is not the same kind of sin that Jesus intended when he was teaching here over 2,000 years ago. In learning a lot more about Jesus and in my search outside of the Bible, I learned so many things that answered so many questions for me that the church could simply never answer. Any question that I ever had would be the cliche answer of God only gives us what we can handle. God works in mysterious ways. Those things never answered questions for me because there's always a why something happens. There's always a reason that something happens, whether it is bad or good, always. There's no accidents and no coincidence. So if you find yourself turning away from God, questioning him, or losing your faith, or if you're a person who has never believed in God, you may want to step back and think, it's not God that you don't believe in, but maybe the image that you have been sold of the way that God works and where you can find God and what exactly God is. To me, God is everything. God equals the universe, the creator of all things, living within the tiniest gnat to the biggest animal and every living thing on this planet. And we're all connected because we all have God residing within us. And once you step back and you learn where you can find God and you learn more about just the way that God operates, which is through you, and you learn more about the true meaning of karma, it makes a lot more sense. A lot of people also do not understand what karma really is. I see a lot of videos where people will say, oh, that person got instant karma. You know, they throw something at somebody and then it comes back and hits them. Now, I'm not saying that that isn't instant karma. Perhaps it could be. But karma it can come back at any time. It could come back right away. It could come back in a year or 10 years or even in another life. And you won't even know that this is your karma, whether it is deemed bad or good. That is your karma for whatever action or thought or word or deed you put out there at some point in your journey or in a previous journey. It's a very interesting and complex thing to think about. And and I could say so much about it. I feel like I'm just overflowing with so much that I want to share, and it's overwhelming to even know where to start. But I wanted to say this. I wanted to say that look beyond the Bible. If you've been relying on the Bible or a specific religion and you're questioning beyond those things, or you find that they're not sufficiently answering your questions. I know for me, I did that for many years, and I made the mistake of searching without, which led to depression, anxiety, addiction, codependent relationships, not knowing how to even navigate life on my own, being afraid to even be alone, always feeling like I needed to have a partner, whether it was even healthy for me or not, was not the issue. I know now, and I know I needed to have those experiences, but I'm glad to say that I did learn from those experiences and from the searching that I have done that I needed to have those. And if you're questioning why certain things happen or how God could allow things to happen, I urge you to look beyond the things that we would normally look to find God in an organized religion, or in a Bible. I would urge you to dig deep within yourself and do some work for yourself and do some reading and really try to ease into forming a personal relationship with God. Nothing that has to do with a religion, nothing that has to do with repeating the same prayers that you were taught because it's what you know. You can simply speak to him like he's your friend, because essentially he is. You're kind of like you're a child, but your parent, you can speak to them like a friend, and also speak to them as a child would go to their parents with a worry. And I do have some good suggestions of books that I have read that really helped me with the subject of God. And I'm going to link those down below in my description so that you guys can check them out. I did read pretty much all of them, the ones that I'm going to mention to you, but obviously I read them on my channel. But obviously, if you like to read a book and you want to ponder it and you want to read it for yourself, you certainly should. Sometimes it's more beneficial to read the words and refer back to them than it is to listen to somebody speaking them to you. So I wanted to give that information to you, that perhaps you need to shift your belief on God and how God operates and what God even is and where God can be found. And perhaps it is okay to let go of what so many of us have been taught as far as these things about God, and that just because the majority believes something, it doesn't make it so. It might make it harder to shift your belief system, and that's okay. That if you want it bad enough, you'll find with time that does get easier, but it does take effort. Every moment of the day, effort to shift some really big and deeply seated beliefs about certain things. So keep an open mind and remember, it's never, ever too late to form a relationship with God. It's never too late to change your mind and your heart about how you feel. But you have to want it for yourself. You have to do it for yourself. Nobody else can navigate that for you. They can certainly lead you in the right direction if you know somebody who is actively also with the same questions and perhaps may be able to help. But trust yourself more when you go within and ask yourself some questions. And I guarantee any answer you get back that comes from a love and a gentle and gracious, when you just have that thought in your head and it's one that is soft-spoken and loving and reassuring, that is God. That is God speaking to you. And once you learn a little bit about that and practice it more, you will trust it more. But start out by seeking a little bit from whatever resources you feel pulled to, whatever that looks like for you. Meditation, reading specific books, talking to specific people, whatever that may be, going out in nature, however it works for you. Search for that relationship with God, your personal relationship that has nothing to do with a religion or rules. And I realize that it can also be very hard to let go of fearing God. A lot of people fear him because many religions have taught us to do that, to fear his wrath, to fear his vengeance, to fear whatever it is that you have done coming back to you and it coming from God. It's not coming from God. It's simply the law of physics. What goes up must come down. What you send out must come back. And we're not always aware of it. But when you become aware of the true purpose of karma, and when you become aware of what God really is, which is a divine masculine and a divine feminine, perfectly blended together like the yin and yang, your relationship with him will shift. It will grow, and you will feel this peace and contentment and compassion, not just for yourself, but for everybody and every living thing on this planet that you've never felt before. And, you know, in growing up being Catholic, I did feel peace when I went to church, and I did feel peace when I would pray the rosary or when I would pray in general. But that is where the peace usually ended for me, is when Mass was over or my prayer was through. I was never able to hold on to that true contentment and peace as I am able to hold on to it now. It feels like it's an ingrained part of my soul that I simply needed to remember. None of the things I'm telling you are things that your soul doesn't already know. Anything you inherently just know, or things that you may read that seem familiar that you've never read before or hear, are things that you already knew, you simply just needed reminding of. So with that being said, I want to remind you that these are just things that I have decided for myself are the truth. And for me, these truths have answered many questions, have created a space of peace in my heart and in my soul that I never had before, and have shifted me in an entirely different way as a human being and as a person on this journey of evolving and growing. And that is always my mission, is to do that, and also to help whoever needs it. I really hope that this came out right. I've been wanting to share sort of this subject on my channel for a while, but I had to be kind of in the right place, mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I felt like, okay, I can come on here today and I can share this with you guys. And I hope that it comes out in my mind. I hope that it came out verbally the way that it was in my mind. Sometimes we can struggle with that, especially in this subject. So look for God inside, and practice discernment. If you're reading something, hearing something, and you're not sure, always take time to think about it before you decide, is this something that I can accept as a truth, or is it not? And some things are easier to accept than others. And certainly if you're meant to accept it and you are you're putting your thought into it, you will eventually come to a conclusion at a very surprising time when you're not even thinking about it. That's often how that happens. Anyways, I think that's all. I don't want to go too much into, I could go into so many different subjects branching off of karma and God. But with a better understanding of God, you may not feel like God is letting you down anymore. You may not feel like, why was this miracle bestowed upon this person, but not that person? there's so much to unravel when talking about God. And I probably will come on here and share a few more videos about the subject. But I wanted to give this to you as something to think about in the meantime. So I hope that you are all doing really well. I love you all so much. I do miss reading books to you, but I needed to give myself a break for a few reasons. But I do miss you guys. So I will be coming on to post videos like this whenever I am inspired to do so. And I hope that you guys will enjoy what I put out there for you. And until I see you again, as always, take care of yourself, take care of those around you. And I will see you again soon for whatever type of video that I post next. Bye-bye.